Hello history fans and happy new year. I hope you had lots of fun as we celebrated coming into 2024. But shall we rewind a few thousand years and find out how the new year was celebrated, when it was celebrated, and when it started happening on January the 1st? Yes, I think we shall. New Year's celebrations are recorded as early as 4,000 years ago in ancient Babylon, well, specifically in Mesopotamia, in about 2000 BCE. The first new moon, or the vernal or spring equinox, marked the start of the new year in March, but throughout antiquity, calendars of course develop and change. In Assyria, Egypt and Persia, the new moon of the autumn equinox marked their new year in September on the 21st-ish. And the Greeks used the winter solstice, which was December 21st. By the 8th century BCE, the Roman calendar had 304 days, but the new year still fell on the vernal equinox. The Roman Republican calendar had the year beginning on the 1st of March, and it wasn't until 46 BCE that Julius Caesar got some mathematicians and astronomers to help develop a new calendar, which is the introduction of the Julian calendar. But this calendar soon fell out of sync with the sun, so they added a few extra days, and January the 1st became the first day of the year, in honour of its namesake Janus, the god of beginnings, in 153 CE. So through all that waffle, I hope you picked up that the Roman New Year eventually lands on January the 1st. Now, because the month had been named after a god that symbolises looking back at the old and ahead to the new, this idea becomes linked with their celebration of the New Year. Then, though, fast forward to early medieval Christian Europe, and the Feast of Annunciation is the start of the new year on the 25th of March. But New Year's Day was observed on December the 25th by the Anglo-Saxons, which makes no sense to me. Anyway, there's too much swaying back and forth between March and December, an idea which is further pushed into ridiculousness by William the Conqueror, who declared January the 1st as the start of the year. But the rest of England stuck with the Christian March 25th. Very confusing. It's not until 1582 that the Roman Catholic Church adopts the Gregorian calendar that restores New Year's Day to January the 1st, and most of Europe follows suit. Scotland in 1660 and England in 1752. But even now, different religions celebrate the start of the year on different days, so we're just as confusing as the rest of history. Traditions that come from each version of New Year's, though, are very interesting. For the ancient Greeks, a baby was the symbol of the new year, and an old man represented the time that had passed. Makes perfect sense to me. Ancient Egypt's New Year's celebration often corresponded with the yearly flooding of the Nile. Curious. The Roman writer Censorinus says that the Egyptian New Year was predicted when Sirius, the brightest star, was first visible in the night sky after not being seen for 70 days. This is also called the helical rising, but it usually occurred in July, so different to when we celebrate now, of course. The festival celebrated at this time of year was called Wepet Renpet. If I'm saying that wrong, I'm very sorry. Which meant the opening of the year. They held feasts and religious rites to honour the time of restart. Similar to us now, they probably got a little bit tiddled as well, and we know this because recent discoveries at the Temple of Mut. During the reign of Hatshepsut, the first month of the year held the Festival of Drunkenness. It was a huge and probably outrageous party in celebration of the myth of Sekhmet and Ra. The war goddess Sekhmet had planned to kill humanity, but the sun god Ra tricked her into drinking until she was unconscious. So the people survived and naturally celebrated their saviour in the way that he saved them, drinking. For the Romans, New Year's was the time to make offering to the god Janus, in the hopes of good fortune for the next year. New Year's Day was like you were setting the stage for your new beginnings, and gifts of figs and honey were commonly given along with well wishes. Ovid, the Roman poet, tells us that a lot of Romans also chose to work that day because idleness was seen as a bad omen for the rest of the year. The Romans, of course, took the name for January from their god Janus, as I said, god of beginnings and change, but he also had two faces, one looking back and the other forward. Much like I'm sure many of us do on New Year's Day, we reflect on the year that's gone and we look forward, hopefully, happily, to the new year. Similar to the reflection, making resolutions is an ancient practice, with some believing that the ancient Babylonians started this custom as an attempt to gain favour from or impress their gods. Now, the Babylonians of ancient Mesopotamia honoured the rebirth of the natural world on New Year's, with a festival called Akitu. In 2000 BCE, it was very intertwined with mythology and religion, so statues of the gods were paraded through cities, and rites were performed that symbolised the gods' victory over the forces of chaos. It was believed that this symbolically cleansed the world in preparation for the new year and the return of spring. As part of the festival, the Babylonian king was stripped of his royal regalia in front of a statue of the god Marduk, and had to swear he had led the city with honour. A priest then slaps him and drags him by the ears. If he cried, it was thought that Marduk was satisfied and had extended the king's rule, sort of reaffirming the king's divine right of power over the people, in a peculiarly demeaning or embarrassing way. They are the first to have recorded celebrations in honour of the new year, but it happened in March, not January, because that's when crops were planted. The original New Year's resolutions were to promise the gods that you would pay off any debts and return any objects that you had borrowed. And if you completed the promises, you'd be in the gods' favour, so it's vaguely the origin of our New Year's resolutions to better ourselves, surely. During the Shang dynasty, over 3,000 years ago, Lunar New Year was celebrated in China. Originally a celebration of new beginnings and spring, it then became intertwined with mythology and the story of the bloodthirsty Nyan who preyed on villagers on New Year. To scare off the creature, people decorated their homes with red, other bright colours and lights, and they burned bamboo and made loud noises, which eventually becomes a huge part of their New Year's celebration. Another celebration that goes all the way back to antiquity was Nowruz, or New Day in Persia. In parts of the ancient Middle East and Asia, a 13-day festival was celebrated on the vernal equinox in March, which again isn't when we celebrate New Year's now, but it celebrated the rebirth and return of spring, as food, farming and harvest were important, and it was more what was celebrated in the past, rather than us just being like, hey, January 1st. Traditions are similar to all the ones we've already heard, like huge feasts, gifts and bonfires, but a different one was a ritual that appears in the 10th century, when a commoner would pretend to be a king for a few days. So lots of ancient celebrations of New Year's, just not consistent dates over time. But that's to be expected on a whistle-stop tour of ancient traditions. Thank you very much for watching. If you are, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Or if you're listening, give us a little rating and follow on Spotify or whatever you are listening on. I do hope you've enjoyed and that you have a happy and healthy 2024. Bye bye.